Heard flooding is starting to pick up, especially in some of the more flood-prone areas like the ones that we saw get so much damage last week. And in addition to flooding, we're having to keep an eye on the winds. That's going to make it pretty hard for people to get around, especially if you're caught in a flood zone. ABC 10 News reporter Dani Miskell is live in San Ysidro. We saw an example of this earlier this morning, Dani, and we've been watching the water behind you rise all morning long along that road. Take us through what you're seeing now.
Hi, Jared, Mel. Yeah, so I'm out here on Hollister Road. You know that this is a very flood-prone area, and so San Diego Fire and Rescue lifeguards have been coming through, making their rounds, checking on this area. There was a car that was stuck in the water here behind me just within the last hour. It finally got towed after being stuck there for hours. But you know, I'm going to go ahead and bring in Lieutenant Rick Romero right now because he's going to talk to us about the comparison of what we're seeing today versus what we saw last Monday. How you doing, Lieutenant?
How are you?
I'm good. Can you talk to us first off, just how are you guys feeling about this storm compared to what we experienced last Monday?
Well, last Monday was 4 inches of rain all at once in a short period of time. Today, it's kind of gradual, hasn't been coming down too hard. It's been mostly green on the radar, but we're looking for those red and yellow patches on the radar that really come down and hit us really hard. So that's what we're kind of looking for right now. We don't have that yet, but as we start to talk, it's starting to come down a little more. But we're out in force, so we have units in Sereno Valley, Mission Valley, the Choice area, and obviously down here in the South Bay.
And down here in the South Bay, what are the trouble areas and the roads that you guys are making your rounds and constantly checking up on?
Well, obviously here at Hollister behind us, it's already kind of flooded. This is residual from last week's storm. Saturn's another prone area. Dairy Mart, kind of Smuggler's Canyon down the way here is also starting to flood. So those are the really problem areas for street closures that we're looking for. Kind of keep drive by and look around and just keep our eyes on it. Obviously in Mission Valley, Fashion Valley roads closed off. And then usually the Sereno Valley area gets pretty inundated. It kind of depends on those red and yellow cells that come in and really give us a lot of water at once that we're looking for.
Yeah, you were explaining to me earlier about how the storm last week really saturated the ground, and that's going to create some maybe slightly more challenges for you guys this time around because the water's going to move a lot quicker. Am I right?
Yeah, well, the water doesn't soak into the soil because it's already been soaked. So now it's going to be pulling up and it's kind of flowing into wherever it wants to go. So we see behind us, this was already kind of started earlier today from just the saturation from last week. Now you add on this amount of rain coming down, and then again for next week as well, the ground is just wet. So depending on how much rain we get all at once, that's going to trigger the really fast moving currents.
Lieutenant, now that we understand the challenges that your team is with of how last week's storm has compounded onto what you're experiencing today, let's talk about another new factor that you guys didn't deal with last week, and that's the high winds. We are currently under a high wind advisory. Can you talk to us about what your teams are planning and on standby for today?
Well, the biggest thing is watch out for trees, power lines that fall down, or trees breaking and knocking down power lines. So those are calls that come into play. We have high winds, talking 40-knot winds along the ocean. That comes in onto the land, and it's going to knock down some palm fronds, trees, branches, anything that's loose, or maybe from the ground being so saturated, you might get a whole tree just coming down. So got to pay attention, watch out for those trees because they can come down out of nowhere, and it's hard to see because especially when it's raining and windy, you got the wipers going off, and you got to pay attention. So drive slow. If you're out there, don't drive in water is the biggest thing. Is you see water, don't drive in there, especially with a small car.
And we know wood's not a conductor of electricity, but water is definitely a conductor of electricity. So for our viewers who may get stuck and driving in this rain or get stuck around those down trees or power lines or maybe even around their home if that happens, what do you suggest that they do?
Well, if in the car, don't get out, right? And call 911. And we'll try to get some help to you as quick as possible.
Thank you so much for those tips, Lieutenant. All right, this is all the latest update that we have for you down here in the South Bay. I'm Dani Miskell. I'll go ahead and send it back to you guys.
All right, Dani, thank you.